I believe I speak for the majority when I state that Spike had the most dynamic and well-handled character growth within the series. Despite him having been shown to be dynamic and well-rounded within Season 2 through his lines with Buffy, it's in Season 4 that some level of change happens to his character, through the chip implanted in him preventing his need to feed on humans being fulfilled, or for him to even attack them. It's through this plot development that we see him become more of a comedic character for a while, though in a manner that shows how to perfectly handle such a dynamic turn as making a threatening villain into a comedic one. Though what I am about to say may sound contradictory to the previous statement, Spike's character arc in Season 4 stands out so much with what he consider a tragic element. An effective method in giving a character a dynamic arc is crippling them in a manner which forces them to reevaluate their identity. Spike being incapable of eating as he's accustomed to, both relying on those he hates and find new forms of enjoyment and putting his desire to fight into defeating demons, shows that he partakes in this. This helps redefine him as a character, as does the comedic moments in between. One instance that stands out is during the attack of a Native American spirit on Thanksgiving, in which most of the Scooby Gang present reservations, pun intended, about defeating such an enemy due to the circumstances of his revenge, whereas Spike acts as the voice of reason with his own philosophy on the concept of conquest with enough comedic flair to it.
You won, alright? You came in and you killed them and you took their land. That's what conquering nations do. That's what Caesar did. He's not going around saying, I came, I conquered, I felt really bad about it.
Along with what I said before, it certainly shows why Spike's change in archetype works, as this premise's execution leads to more than simply being comic relief. To add to this, there's also his interaction with Giles a few episodes later, when the latter has been transformed into a Fial demon, as Spike displays more skills than he's previously had a chance to show in being fluent in Fial, and there's a little bit of comedy in him extorting money from Giles to help him. This serves as a reminder that a well-rounded character will often display unexpected traits, yet ones consistent with their character, and that a villain should not become suddenly aligned with their former enemies, as character growth is gradual. These may sound like simple points, but putting them into practice isn't as simple when looking at some comparative examples. Considering Whedon's success in injecting quippy or snarky humour into his characters here, it's worth looking at him handling humour poorly with a villain. The titular villain in the MCU's Age of Ultron has humorous moments dissonant for his character, with things such as forgetting the word children, when his role as being filled with all the knowledge on humanity the internet had to offer makes this nonsensical. Making Ultron have humorous moments unlike his previous incarnations in itself isn't bad when he acts as a dark reflection to Tony Stark's personality, but the problem is that trying to use the same type of humour that worked on Buffy's characters such as Spike for one such as Ultron doesn't work, due to the effectiveness of comedy and story relying even more on the characterization and context surrounding it than on how funny the joke itself is. Ultron's comedic nature and moments only cause him to become a less threatening villain for what's meant to be a planetary threat with different logic to humanity, whereas the comedy surrounding Spike tends to be more situational and grounded cases fitting with his characterization. There is another Marvel comparison I'll make, but more on that later. Some may say that comparison wasn't entirely fair when Ultron didn't have an arc of being a serious villain and then a comedic character, and you'd be right. For one closer to this transition, let's look at Buggy from the manga One Piece. Fans of the series may find it difficult to remember that Buggy was at one point a somewhat threatening villain in dealing a debilitating stab to Zoro, as well as drawing on elements of the killer clown trope in his design. In his subsequent appearances though, he becomes purely a gag character, with his character history flocking others to his cause in what's a more convenient version of Mr. Satan's look in Dragon Ball, though currently without something on par with the payoff at the end of the Boo arc. With what role he has in the plot after becoming a comedic character being either forced or one note. Some examples include him having managed to either smuggle in or make a muggy ball when imprisoned in Impel Down, strong enough to damage those who prove a challenge to Luffy far stronger than the one who countered his buggy ball and defeated him, or amassing a great enough following that he could somehow secure a stronghold in the New World and have Mihawk and Crocodile see him as a useful pawn, being a major suspension of disbelief. When you go from being someone that can threaten the main characters to a gag character whose main gimmick is having incredible luck, and whose whole career could have been ended hindered by any hacker user simply punching him, it shows how poorly the execution of Buggy's potential was. To compare, Spike works so well as a comedic character by being more than that. Along with the reasons I mentioned before, the Spike being able to work as more than one archetype at a time. Despite not being able to physically harm humans anymore, he displays the ability to harm the Scooby Gang through more subtle aspects, in playing to their insecurities, such as Giles questioning the value of his role as Buffy becomes ever more competent and independent, drawn on Xander's concerns of his masculinity and use to the group, or on Willow's lessening of her tech-savvy skills in favour of her grown magical capabilities. This in itself also leads to an argument between the group that displays how well Buffy and Season 4 specifically handle tone and context for their humour. That has been covered well enough by Mauler in Part 2 of his The Force Awakens critique to the extent I won't retread on it. We can compare this to how Whedon handled Loki well during the point in the first Avengers film in which he draws on the weaknesses and instability of the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel. This is fitting with Loki's role as a god of mischief, but the same can be said of Spike fitting well into the role of trickster, with how the most famous conception of a vampire is a manipulative being that verbalizes or embodies the temptation characters or the audience may already have. Also, some elements of a trickster character include having high libidos, which fits very well with Spike. Another important point of tying these two tricksters to the narrative is also within how they affect the main characters and strengthen their bonds by the finale. In the case of the Avengers, they are shown the repercussions of Loki's manipulation and realise the necessity in working together in stopping him. Spike's actions in Season 4 result in far more meaningful growth though, with the argument between the Scooby Gang members bring main concerns to light and allows for the bonds of the group to eventually be reforged when opened up, as they come together to aid in Buffy defeating Adam in the season's climax. Whereas keeping these doubts hidden from each other may not have resulted in as much necessary teamwork. It reminds me somewhat of this biblical passage of how God utilises this trickster archetype to expose aspects of reality, much in a similar manner to how the Buffyverse's powers that be expose aspects of the Scooby Gang's psychology to bring their bonds to a necessary strength to succeed in their tasks. In a series that balances multiple tones, it is important for a comedic character to be more than just a personified joke, and to be able to fit in as an integral aspect of the story when utilised well. All that said, Spike's role in Season 4 perfectly explores how to balance multiple tones of one's plot or character, or how to seamlessly transition between the archetypes they present in a story, or represent another one entirely through the combination of them. Next time, when talking about Season 5, we'll instead move away from a much more overarching aspect and condense things down to a particularly masterful episode. Also, I debated having the Season 4 video focus on why Be a Bad is the most underrated episode in the series, so if interested in that one, do tell me and I may make it at a later point.